We now have details when it comes to Lane Kiffin's contract, and he said LSU is the best job in college football. Is it really, though? We're going to break that down and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. We got another brand new episode ready for you on a Let Me Talk to You Tuesday, and we're gonna get into it because we got details earlier on Monday morning regarding Lane Kiffin's contract details, and it is very interesting when you really kind of do a deep dive into the minutia of it. And of course, it all begins with how much he is going to get paid. It's $91 million over the next 7 years. So he'll be the second highest paid coach in the entire country, around $13 million a year. Now, there is some interesting caveats to this. One of them is if he wins the national championship, there's an automatic escalator to make him the highest paid coach in the country. Now, based off of what I read, it doesn't specify when it comes to Ole Miss because there's an interesting incentive in this contract. Because if Ole Miss does make the college football playoff this year, he could make up to $1 million in incentives off of that old contract. That's because they're wanting to pay him the money that he would be owed from Ole Miss before jumping ship. He wanted to see this team out. He wanted to finish the story. But of course, as we know, they did not allow that to happen. So he is on the outside looking in and watching a lot like the rest of us from afar. But again, like that automatic escalator will make him the highest paid coach in the country. And this is another interesting part of the contract details that we were able to see pop up on Monday morning. I'll give credit to Wilson Alexander to be one of the first ones to bring up the contract situation. And it is impressive, to say the least, to see everything that is in the details with his contract details. One of those being that reportedly there is $25 to $30 million a year that's going to be available for LSU's roster when it comes to revenue share, as well as what they have when it comes to NIL deal money. Like, that's how much money they're going to be throwing to players to come aboard this program. There's about $12 million a year he's going to be making, but there's a chance where he could be $13 million a year before it's all said and done over the course of those 7 years. Now, there are some other things, obviously. If Lane Kiffin is fired without cause, he is going to be owed 80% of his remaining salary, and this will be paid out in monthly installments through the remainder of the deal. This does not include any mitigation or offset clause should Lane then get another job. And that's another thing, is if he leaves after the first year, based off of what Wilson Alexander said in his article that kind of broke down the details, he will have to pay the university $7 million if he decides to exit stage left after 1 year if he sees a better job, which is an interesting thing to put in there because we've seen this before. We've seen this story where Lane Kiffin shows up for a few years, brings a program back from the metaphorical dead, and exits stage left. Case in point, Ole Miss, mind you, he stayed a lot longer than some other programs that he was a part of. Because at the end of the day, it's all about making sure he gets that almighty dollar and gets himself to the highest bidder, which is one of the biggest reasons why I am looking forward to seeing what he does for the Tigers. But I'm not necessarily sure he's going to be there for a long time. So Tiger fans, just enjoy the ride that you're going to be on when it comes to the Lane train, because I don't think this will be the final stop, the final station for Lane Kiffin. I feel like before too long, if that job over in Tuscaloosa becomes available, he might make the jump over there. And Lane Kiffin wound up talking about it on social media, on his press conference, the initial press conference he had. And this is a quote that definitely got a lot of people talking, is the statement that LSU is the best job in all of college football. And he can say that. And he kind of has to, right? If you are going to be the head honcho for the LSU Tigers, or anywhere for that matter, you're not going to go out there and say, oh, this is just a stepping stone, mediocre job. No, you're going to say this is one of the best jobs in college football. And people were telling him that. And I think, namely, the statement regarding being the best school in college football, I think there had something to do with that, because after all, Nick Saban coached LSU for many years, and now he's watching from afar. He was a rival with them for over a decade. Over a decade. That was a rivalry game. Mind you, it was a lot more lopsided in the 2010s, but the fact of the matter is, that was a game LSU fans, and I think the college football universe, had circled that first week in November 5th. We don't just remember it because of V for Vendetta, but we remember it because of the iconic games that were surrounding that particular date on the calendar. The first week of November is always one to watch. It's always going to be one of those games that we are glued in on as a college football loving world. That said, I'm not necessarily sure that statement holds a lot of water. Is it the best job in college football? I don't necessarily think it's the best job that was available in this current cycle. I would agree with that statement. Because when you look around the world of college football, right? I think Ohio State has a strong case of being that, because there's a lot of stability. Ryan Day has brought that program back up to what it was back in the early 2000s, in the 2010s even. They were the first national champions of the college football playoff. Lo and behold, they expand the playoff. Who's the first champions? The Ohio State University. And I'm not even a fan of Ohio State. Not as much as the Saints have been over the last decade or so when it comes to drafting players from that particular university. But the fact that we're saying, Lane Kiffin is saying, LSU is one of the best jobs in college football. I get where he's coming from. It's very much a political statement. But I kind of sort of disagree with that statement, because it just doesn't feel like it is one of the best. It is very close. Trust me, it is very, 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 very close to being there. I think it's top 3, no doubt. But to say it is undisputedly the best is a little bit of a reach, at least in my opinion. But one more thing, when we come to the LSU Tigers and the changes, we're seeing a lot of stuff pop up. And we're getting the idea of who is coming aboard from Ole Miss, because some coaches have jumped ship. Not all of them, but ones to keep an eye on. Charlie Wise Jr., we mentioned him on Monday's pod. He is officially going to be part of the program as the offensive coordinator. He signed a 3-year deal worth $6 million. Annual salary is going to start at 1.9, one of the top 10 highest paid assistants in the country this year, and it increases annually over the course of the contract. Then you have Joe Cox. He'll be joining the staff after being part of it back in 2024 as the co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach. And he worked previously as the tight ends coach at Alabama all the way back in 22. George McDonald will be leading the wide receiving core. Nick Savage, the head strength coach. Mike Williams and Sawyer Jordan will be joining the program as well. Mike Williams, the senior director of player personnel, and Sawyer Jordan being an analyst and inside receivers coach. And those two will be making about $800,000 to $825,000 a year. Again, this is all coming from one Wilson Alexander and getting his coaching staff, especially on the offensive side, because we talked about it all this season, is the defense. As long as Blake Baker is still going to be the DC going into 2026, you don't need to change much with the core of the defense in terms of your coaching staff. You don't need to change much. You got some of the Weeks brothers going to be sticking around in 2026. So you should be fine on that front. The biggest thing you're going to have to focus in on is the offense and getting guys that are offensive minded. And what we've seen so far with Ole Miss's offense, I mean, you managed to take a guy that was a Division II quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss and make him a household name pretty much overnight. That says something about what Lane Kiffin can do. He made Jackson Dart look like a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. Trust me, he seems to be a miracle worker when it comes to defense with offense. Let him cook and let him get some guys in there. I think Frank Wilson is likely going to stick around because you do not want to lose a key cog when it comes to the recruiting game. And I've been seeing it, and I'll keep saying it, and I'm hoping I do not jinx this. I do not, repeat, do not want to see Ed Ogeron anywhere near this LSU program in 2026 or any other year. He did a great job for what he did, but it's time to move on. I get it. He brought this team a national championship. It's not worth it to have him come back to this program in any form or fashion. I feel like the people that want him back, they have the memory of a rodent, and they don't realize how much negative publicity and damage he did to the brand of LSU. That's just how I feel. If you have a different opinion, let us know in the comments. And make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast today. And I brought up Blake Baker. It seems like he is going to be a seemingly virtual lock to stay with this program in 2026. But he is at least interviewing for a shot at being a head coach. Because don't forget, there is a job inside the state of Louisiana that is wide open, and that is the job over at Tulane. Again, Blake Baker, the resume he had, he made this LSU program. He was a saving grace for an LSU team. If that defense was like half bad, it would be an absolute mess. Now, again, there are rumors and innuendo when it comes to Blake Baker interviewing. He could leave, but it feels like more likely than not, Zach Nagy mentioned on Monday morning that he is going to stick around, according to Matt Zenitz as well. Those are the reports, but I would not be surprised if an offer does come up, Blake Baker exits stage left and makes the way over to Yulman Stadium and leads that team and tries to keep that new tradition, that new winning tradition going. That's at least how I see it. But I want to kind of wrap up today's podcast, more overarching the state of college football, because based off of what we've seen over the last 24 to 48 hours, namely with Tulane and LSU and Ole Miss, is that silly season needs to undergo some kind of reform. And I feel like the NCAA has to have a serious conversation about this, because you never hear about this in the NFL, right? You don't hear about coaches right before they get into playoff mode saying, hey, I'm headed out. I'm going to go ahead and take this job somewhere else. No, more often than not, you hear about it, them taking jobs pretty much the day after, like with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore stuck around with the team, and then signed the contract right after. Did he interview? Absolutely. But he did not take the job and leave a team high and dry going into a playoff run. And again, Lane Kiffin left the team, and everything seems, emphasis on seems, to lead towards Ole Miss being a college football playoff team. And there's been an argument and a discourse on social media over the last 48 hours saying that because they don't have a head coach, because they've got an interim, or in this case, they're listing him as permanent, and Pete Golding running the program, that they should not be in consideration for the playoff at all. And ditto goes for Tulane. Everybody is saying that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to take serious consideration into the fact that some of these teams will not have a head coach that started the season finishing it out. And people are bringing up the Florida State stuff as a reference. If this actually does happen and we see Ole Miss, who I think absolutely deserves a shot in the college football playoff, even if Lane Kiffin is not running things, because at the end of the day, these kids earned it. Because if they go and play in some mid-tier bowl in late December, half of those players will not play because they do not care about that. They signed up for this and said, we want to get to the national championship game. We want to make a run that we have never made as a university, because they've never won a natty in their life. The Ole Miss Rebels. So if they don't get into the CFP, half that team opts out and focuses on the offseason, getting ready for the draft, whatever it is, because it means nothing to them. Ditto for Tulane. And I think Tulane has a harder road, because if they lose the game this Friday night to North Texas, I feel like JMU could be the team that gets in there. Could be Troy. Like, there's so many options when it comes to potential head coaches or potential teams to be from the group of five. Again, all things considered, at this point, Tulane is the option. They're the highest ranked team, but they lose on Friday. All bets are off. And the College Football Playoff Committee is going to have to scramble like a quarterback under the Saints offensive line. The pressure is going to be on for them to find the right team to fit that spot, because they have to give a group of five team one shot based off of how the final polls work out. And we'll find that out on Sunday. But going back to the main point is college football needs to change the rules when it comes to coaching hires and in silly season. I'd say if you're in the playoffs, you can't accept a job until this point, until you are eliminated from the playoffs. Like, if Lane Kiffin made it all the way to January, as much as it would pain LSU fans to just wait this out, it's the right thing to do for these players. I think this is the moment where you have to have that serious conversation. And I'm just thinking out loud about it relative to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. And just hold on for a second. So let's go back to 2021, when the Cajuns had one of their best seasons of all time. The only loss they had was against the University of Texas at the beginning of the year, and they were ranked in the top 25. They won the Sun Belt Conference Championship. And if this were the expansion year, like, let's say we take the 2024 rules onward and we move that back to 2021, I feel like the Cajuns would have a very strong case towards being in the CFP, just to the best of my memory and my recollection. I think they were the highest ranked group of five team in the CFP top 25. So they would have been in there. Billy Napier, after the championship game, made the jump over to the University of Florida. Coach Dez coached that team in the New Orleans Bowl. Great moment. And he's led that team to 3 more bowl games. It's been great to see that. 8 straight years the Cajuns have made a bowl game. Shout out to them. But if you saw the Cajuns have a shot at the college football playoff, they probably would have been on the outside looking in because of the fact that they did not have a head coach in place, because Napier had taken the job at Florida like the very next day. And the Cajuns had to scramble, and they wound up giving the job to Coach Dez to keep that culture going. And it's been mixed results, for better or for worse. He's done a good job, but not necessarily as great of a job as one Billy Napier did over there. Again, big fish, small pond type situation. But the point is, when it comes to this conversation, is when it comes to these teams, if you have a shot at making the college football playoff and you bail on your team, even though like Keith Carter didn't want him to finish it out because he already pretty much agreed to the deal, I don't think he should have been able to have that conversation until after his run in the playoffs were done. Even if you had to wait till freaking mid-January. It's not fair to the kids or the young adults playing this game to miss out on the college football playoff. And if we see that this coming Sunday, be it for Tulane or Ole Miss, we're going to reset this conversation here on this podcast. And I'm hoping there are a lot more conversations being had by the folks at ESPN when it comes to this. That is going to be a lot of stuff that I'm questioning. But that about to do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, give us a follow and subscribe to us over on YouTube and follow us on social media. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour. Talk to you next time.